Hello, my name is Dylan, and this is my co-host Caitlin, and we are here today on behalf of the mock trial team interviewing State Representative candidate Karen Berry. Karen, could you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. Dylan, Caitlin, thanks for having me, and I'm pleased that I had an invitation to come be able to introduce myself to the community. I grew up in the town of Hanson on Winter Street and then lived over at Kings Landing Way. My father was a state rep while I was a child, actually for about 30 years here in the district. So we kind of grew up in a household where public service was just part of what we did. And this district is actually the towns of Hanson, Pembroke, and Duxbury. And it's an open seat, which means that both myself, I'm the Republican candidate, and my Democratic challenger are running for the first time, and neither of us have held office.
Thank you. Now on with the interview.
Drastic budget cuts in our school district have repeatedly put the jobs of our teachers at stake, as well as addressing many of the unique programs offered by our school. How do you plan to support our local education system?
And that's such an important question, and I think it's one of the most important things that we can do as legislators is it's returning what they call local aid. So when you pay your taxes, a percentage of it goes to the state for the budget. And one of the goals of mine, and again the Republican caucus is what they call you when you're up there at the State House, you're either in the Democratic caucus or the Republican caucus, and one of the main objectives is always to return a greater percentage of local aid back to the towns. And I've worked in town government as a committee member in Hanson, Wage and Personnel, and a couple other boards. So I've been able to see firsthand it's really hard to make our budget without going back and increasing taxes. We're asking for more fees. So the most important thing we can do is take a look at our state budget and make sure we prioritize to return good local, it's called Chapter 70 money for the schools, or local aid back to the community, so that the community has more revenue to be able to fund the schools, which is critical because, as you probably know, our towns spend more than 50% of our budgets on education. It's huge and it's important. So as a legislator, I want to go and continue that practice. Over the last 2 years, the legislature's changed a little bit, and it's 160 seats, 127 are held by Democrats, 33 by Republicans, so it's really out of balance. But it was 16 2 years ago. And when we had the ability to change from 16 up to 33, a little bit more than or that, we started to see local aid in the last 2 years come back because it's such a big priority for the Republican caucus. It would be for me, and I want to be elected so that I can go. And again, when you're looking at a budget, you're making your priorities, remembering the necessity of returning this money back to our town, specifically for use in our schools.
Thank you. The district currently budgets over $1 million in transportation. Because Whitman-Hanson is a regional school district, the district cannot legally charge for busing students who live 1.5 miles or more from their schools. Regional transportation reimbursement from the state has not been fully funded at 100%, and we cannot charge for transportation. As a result, the district pays for a major portion of busing costs. In order to save teaching positions, the start times of schools, the high school, Conley, and Duval, were adjusted to reduce transportation costs and save teaching positions. This has resulted in an early start time, which is challenging for students and staff at the high school. What do you plan to do about the laws regarding regional transportation?
Well, and again, regional transportation was kind of one of those carrots that were out there. When you regionalize, there were certain incentives that the state gave communities to regionalize, and the transportation was part of that deal, and it was giving that money back to the towns, and the state hasn't held true on that. And that's mandates. You'll hear people talk a lot about we shouldn't have mandates from the state level that aren't funded to help the towns. So it's wrong, but the whole formula for education is it hasn't been addressed for many, many years. And the problem is it's created an inequity. And if you look at a Lawrence, for example, a huge percentage of their budget comes through state revenue. And then you look at someone like someplace like our district, and you're not seeing that. And I think it's critical that we have to go back and we have to look at just basic formula. And when you make a commitment, you need to live by that commitment, or if you can't live by that commitment, then there needs to be a discussion in terms of how you're phasing it out and how do you compensate so that the district can handle it. And that early start time, I have 3 high school teenagers, and that is really, it's really hard to get up and out. So I commiserate with you guys having to do that. But it has to be addressed, and until we get more balance in the legislature, unfortunately, our speakers have all come from an urban area versus, we in the suburban area, and we find the agenda tends to be more driven towards city discussions, and it's important that we go back and revisit all of that.
There has been an increase in the number of clients being supported by local food pantries. Do you plan to grant aid to these food pantries?
I think it's critical, and this goes back to a lot of local initiatives through the churches and through local groups, and the type of aid that we've been able to give people that need it has been reduced, and it's because obviously revenues aren't there. Over 50% of our budget now is in health and human services, and we've found $5.5 million in fraud. And the government has a responsibility to go and to be sure that the people that are the neediest are getting the help that they need. And again, promoting of local, I actually deliver meals to seniors that are housebound, that can't get out. And through our church, we have a food pantry. And I think it's critical that people are aware you don't. When you do this type of work, you start to realize there are a lot of people, even in our towns, they need help. They need some help. This recession has gone a little bit longer than I think most had expected. It is taking a toll on families, and it's really important that we look out for our neighbors.
Why do you want to represent the district?
Well, because having grown up here, I've always lived here, and raising my family here, and then also having that piece where I watched my father serve. He was a great example of how you give back to your community. I've found that the combination of having more of a business background, and the last year I've worked directly with the budget through the Sheriff's Department, and it wasn't in private sector, but I'm in the public sector. I've been able over the last year to really see how government works, to really see the budget, to really understand how this imbalance in our government is not creating good conversation. We're not getting good ideas, and I think I can be part of the solution, because I'm walking in there and I'm a mom. I am a working mother, wife. I've started small business, I've worked in business, and I've also worked in our towns and in local government. And I think when you take that life experience and you put it together, that you can go and you can have a real impact, because like any group, it all shouldn't look the same. You should have people from all different walks of life, all different experiences, and there should be debate, and you should know how your legislators are voting. And until we can change those numbers and everybody holds each other a little bit more accountable, I don't think we have good government. So I want to be able to help, and as the Republican candidate, I'm able to go, I'm fiscally conservative, and remember that people can't withstand those taxes that they want to impose next year. $4 a gallon on gas. Yeah. They're looking at mileage tax. How many miles do you drive? Families really can't handle that. I don't think the answer is let's just continue to tax. I think we need to create a business environment so that when you guys get out of school, you get out of college, that there are jobs that you can go to. So that's it. I think that my resume, if you will, and I think my desire to serve and experience will hopefully be the right voice for this district.
I heard you talking about you started a small business.
Yes.
Well, I'll try to continue on with that. How do you plan on helping small businesses in the town?
Well, and again, that's a great question, because right now what we know is that the greatest growth sector in business are the small companies. 1 to 10 employees, they're having 1 or 2 people at a time come into their business. And we really don't have a business-friendly environment in the Commonwealth. So again, just kind of talking about those taxes, I was endorsed by a couple of great groups, Citizens for Limited Taxation, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. And why that I'm so proud of that is because they've been able to identify that my priorities are in line with what small business is looking for. So again, we really over-regulate. We get a little crazy on some of the the things that we're asking businesses to do. And I think it's because the composition of our legislators are not really in tuned to how it works. And you know what? We have people that have started business, they're afraid to take on one more employee or two more employees because we're very unpredictable in this state. Tax code goes up and down, the regulations change. So I think the best thing I can do is use my life experience and go in and be able to look at this legislation, make amendments to say this doesn't happen in the real world, and remember that at the end of the day that we need to get people back to work. It's not a good environment. We have way too many people that can't find jobs. Or people that are working, it's called being underemployed. And it's not really within their profession and they're not able to make ends meet. So I think the legislature gets involved in a lot of things. What we really need to focus in on right now is we need to focus in on allowing small businesses to grow so that they're available to hire your families and all of you.
Would you support the legalization of medical marijuana?
Well, those ballot questions are so interesting. This is the key word. It's medical marijuana. So most medicines are prescribed by a doctor, and then also you get them filled in through a prescription at a pharmacy, and there are controls in place. So I have really been counseled by law enforcement on this one because there's been some experimentation with it in California and other places. The way this law is written is it's more a dispensary that you would go to. And if you can't get to the dispensary, then you'd have the ability to grow it in your backyard. It's very loose. It's basically legalizing marijuana. So I'm going to say at this point in time that my vote for that would be no because of some of the past problems. And again, we have a serious opiate drug abuse problem in our area. I think most everybody knows somebody, good people that have found themselves in trouble, and I think we need to address it. And I don't think legalizing marijuana helps us in any means start to address really a core problem that we have in our towns.
If elected, would you support the legalization of prescribing medication to end the life of a terminally ill patient?
And again, that's such a very serious question, and people conflicted with that because you'd like to believe that at the end of life you had some control. My vote on that for you to know is no, and the reason is I spent a lot of time looking at it. I've spoken to hospice nurses, and if anybody's had to go through the very painful experience of letting go and unfortunately losing someone they love, that we do have measures in place where you're able to say, I don't want to have extra care at the end of life, or you're able to be able to have hospice care, and hospice care comes in and keeps you comfortable. The fear here is that on paper, when you first read it, it seems like, well, isn't that kind? And that would be a fair measure for somebody who really knows they're terminal and the pain and suffering is too much. The problem is that, I mean, it's not a problem. The opportunity is hospice allows for that gentle, I think palliative care is what they call it, end of life. The real concern is that, what about elder abuse? And again, when people, it's not just specific doctors that can prescribe that. A lot of different doctors can prescribe it. And not everybody has good intentions. And so I think we need to spend a little more time on that and maybe write it up a little bit differently. So as it stands right now, for me personally, it wouldn't be a vote for the Commonwealth. We'll all vote on that individually. My vote would be no.
Well, that concludes our interview. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. So glad to be here. Appreciate the good questions, too.
I'm Dylan Porter, and this is Caitlin. We're signing off.